I was, C.T. Salazar was our guest reader on Sunday. He came in from Mississippi, and I was telling, hi Steph, I'm pointing at you. I was telling them about the reading tonight, and I was like, yeah, it's Constance, Adler, and Mona Lisa Saloy. And C.T. goes, Constance, Adler, I know that name. Yeah, he's like, her work is really good. It's gonna be a good reading. So you have fans around the world. Yeah. Yeah, it's nice to know. Anyway, Constance Adler is the author of My Bayou, New Orleans Through the Eyes of a Lover, Michigan State University Press. Her stories have appeared in River Tea, Oxford American, Gambit Weekly, Utney, The Reader, Podunk Review, and Blackbird. She has a first place award in feature writing from the Louisiana Press Association. Words and Music Literary Festival honored her story Look with a first place award for memoir. Sewanee Review placed her work as a finalist in the 2021 nonfiction contest. She lives near Bayou St. John in New Orleans. Give it up for Constance.
Thank you so much for that delightful introduction and for inviting me. I haven't read in so long. I hope I remember how. So this is a story titled Select. Am I making it into the microphone? No?
Mm-hmm.
Like this? Like this? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
We can
I'm
raise
not
it,
used to this
yeah.
tall.
You're so tall.
I am tall.
Is that feel comfortable?
Hello. Hello.
Yes.
Okay, so this story is called Celestial Splendor. It's one of a series of short memoirs that I've been working on for quite a while, but this is fairly new. So Celestial Splendor. My grandfather calls me from the condo in Fort Lauderdale a few days before I'm scheduled to arrive for a visit from New York. He whispers into the phone like he's calling from jail. When you land at the airport, don't take a cab, rent a car, I'll pay for it. I am helpless to resist when someone uses my favorite words, I'll pay for it. So I rent a boxy beige Toyota when I get to Florida and find my way to the towering pile of condos where my grandma and grandpa spend the winter. Theirs is one of a dozen or so identical towers lining the beach, so I miss the turn every time, coming and going. As far as I can see, this environment offers no distinguishing characteristics. Grandma meets me at the door in her usual fashion. It's time to eat, she says. What took you so long? Grandpa calls out a jubilant greeting from the living room where he has been rattling his newspaper. He generally doesn't get up from his armchair unless he has a good reason, like the house is on fire. So I drop my bags in the hall and walk over to his chair. My darling, he says, stretching out the bowels. Such a flirt. I lean over and kiss him on the top of his bony, bald head, a gesture that he accepts by blinking his eyes like a contented turtle. The blue-green vista of the Atlantic Ocean stretches beyond the plate glass sliding doors that lead to their balcony. The foreverness of the darkening sky and water merge into each other as evening settles. They have already eaten dinner hours earlier, so I'm the only one who still needs to be fed. Grandma sets me up at the kitchen table, first with a bowl of chicken soup augmented with fat tortellini and a snowy pile of grated Parmesan cheese. My grandmother would put Parmesan cheese on her ice cream if we let her. A plate of lasagna warms it in the oven. She removes a carafe from the refrigerator and pours me a glass of watery, chilled wine. I think she dilutes this dry red for herself so she doesn't get too tipsy too fast. Well, too late for that. Grandma has gone a bit plummy tonight while waiting for me. We all know how that can happen. She's not so plummy that she can't wrangle dinner for her granddaughter. Just enough to unleash her mouth and her heart's passions. Right away they are shouting at each other because what is dinner without shouting? Through the thin walls of the condo they yell. He in the living room, she in the kitchen. He urges her to feed me. She tells him to mind his own business. She knows what she's doing. I fill my mouth with soup like a good girl, keep my head down, and wait for the flurry to pass. On an earlier occasion, I have sat with the two of them at the dinner table where he berated her for eating with an enthusiasm he found vulgar. Mangi, mangi, he said, making his voice whiny with sarcasm. She looked up from her bowl and with a full mouth shot back, Mangistrots. I don't know if other people's grandparents invite each other to choke on their food, but one learns to take this in stride. Tonight, my grandmother sets the plate of lasagna in front of me, more food than I'd eat in a week. She sits across from me with her pink wine and relaxes into her chatty mood. She wants to talk about my writing. For the past few years, I've been working as a magazine journalist. She is aware of what I'm doing because my grandfather reads my stories out loud to her since she's not a big reader. Grandpa is largely an autodidact who completed high school with night classes. While in the day he worked delivering blocks of ice from a mule-drawn wagon. He named the mule Pip after himself. All his life he has inhaled the printed word like a junkie. Lately he has taken on the role of my archivist and publicist. He Xeroxes my published work and sends copies around to all my aunts, uncles, and cousins. Once he wrote a letter to the editor of a magazine where I worked in which he pretended to be an average random reader who did not know me. My grandfather praised my articles to the skies, citing my superb grasp of the English language, that he had double-checked them for errors in grammar or spelling and found none. Now my grandmother is not illiterate. She could read the labels on soup cans, but she's not a big reader in the literary sense, having dropped out of school at age 13. When she was newly arrived in America from Bari and enrolled in school, the principal placed her in the first grade because she struggled too much with English to keep up with the 8th graders. She walked out because she was embarrassed to be the biggest kid in a room of 6-year-olds. Instead, she went to work by taking in laundry at night and sewing piecework during the day at a garment factory. Tonight, at the kitchen table, she marvels at what I do with my time and my talents. You think of something up here, she said, pointing to her own forehead, and then you just put it on the paper, like that. Amazing. Maybe it's all the pink wine between us, but I feel like I have struck gold. What I do is magic. I did not fully appreciate that until seeing the wonder I had placed in my grandmother's eyes. The next morning I wake to the smell of coffee, cigarettes, and hairspray. My grandmother's fragrances waft over the condo. My grandfather waits for me in the hallway. He smells of shaving cream, a woodsy citrus perfume that will forever raise his ghost in my memory. He is immaculate this morning, from his polished white loafers to the sharp peak on his summer weight fedora. He radiates readiness. He gives me barely enough time to eat some breakfast before hustling me out the door. He wants to go, go, go. Where did you park the car? He asks. There's no doubt in my heart that I'm a cherished granddaughter. However, I am also an able-bodied adult with a valid driver's license. That last feature comprises my primary appeal to him right now. A few years ago, when it was determined that his driving style, and to disregard for traffic regulation, posed a public hazard, his children took away the keys to his powder blue Cadillac. Ever since, he's had to rely on public transportation to get where he wants to go, go, go. A restriction that he finds both humiliating and plain annoying. As we are coasting along Ocean Boulevard with all the windows rolled down, I glance over at my grandfather. His elbow perches on the edge of the door. He squints with pleasure at the light March breeze coming in off the water. This early spring sunlight touches his gold watch, casting yellow sparks around the car. Here it is, the freedom of driving, even if it has to be remote controlled through a grandchild. This, finally, is what he craves. The sheer manly decisiveness to go where he wants to go without waiting for anyone's permission or accommodation. And no stinking bus is filled with old people. He rouses from his reverie and says, up on the right, turn there. A few more turns later, and I see where we're going. The Gulfstream Park racetrack. Grandpa and I are playing ponies. I follow his hitching, sway-backed walk inside. He snags a copy of the Daily Racing Form and a short yellow pencil, and then out to the viewing stand. He finds a place to sit in the shade and makes himself comfortable. It's early yet. The track has just opened, nearly empty save for a handful of old men who were going stir-crazy at their condos, and now me. The first race doesn't start for an hour at least, which gives us time to study. My grandfather opens the Daily Racing Form on the table. He has a piece of paper and his pencil ready, and he begins to teach me how to read this newspaper. I thought I already knew how to read a newspaper, but apparently I was wrong. My tribal elder conveys this important life skill wisdom with care. I would pay better attention, but I am so entranced by the beautiful horses trotting down the track toward the starting gate, their crazy heads tossing in the sunlight, wild muscles rippling beneath their gleaming hides. that much of my grandfather's teaching goes beyond me. Still, he tries. He places his thick index finger at each horse in the first race and spelled out the arcane method to divining guidance suggested by this newsprint. A horse has a recent performance history that varies depending on the length of the race, the track conditions, the jockey, the horse's ancestors, what the horse ate for breakfast, the astrology of the moment, the horse's general happiness. My grandpa collates this information in his head along with each horse's odds of winning, posted on the board overhead, and then spits out a betting strategy. He would like to convey that his process is scientific. To me, it looks like he stares at the printed page, allows his psychic powers to direct him, and then he hands me $2 with instructions to place it on a certain horse to win, place, or show. He might order up a trifecta, or if he's feeling just a tiny bit cautious, he tells me to box the wager. My job is to run inside, to get his bet placed at the window before the bell. Then I run down to watch the race at the rail, as close as I can get without catching a hoof in the face. My breath roars down the track with these gorgeous creatures. Their thundering bodies flash by so fast their legs are a blur. Only flying dirt clouds show that they were there. I almost think it didn't really happen. Maybe I imagined it. I want to see it again. When I return to my grandfather, he's leaning back and smiling with his arms crossed over his paunch. He's doing well this morning, more than pleased. It makes him cackle to play the angles and beat the odds. He never bets more than $2, but the amount of his winnings doesn't matter. What matters is that he exploits a seam, some canny numbers know-how, and works the system to come out ahead. I run back and forth like this, placing his bets for him over a few races. Then he announces it's time for me to pick a horse. He says he'll even front me the $2. How can I say no? Together we lean over the daily racing form and look down the list for the next race. Okay, what do you like in the fourth? He asks. This one, I say, and tap my finger on the page. A horse named Celestial Splendor, a bay filly, 3 years old. She's from Kentucky, a wonderful place, although I've never been there. Anyway, I'm certain this is the horse for me. I'm in love. It's her name that gets me, Celestial Splendor. My heart's imagination soars into the sky with these words. Anyone attached to such a romantic string of syllables is the only horse I want to bet on. My grandfather looks at the page. He looks at me. He is cautious, doesn't want to hurt my feelings. That horse is favored to win, he says. Well, that doesn't surprise me at all, I say, with a name like that. Again, he's slow to respond, as if unsure of my intelligence. You're never going to make any money that way, he says. Grandpa and I are not on the same page. He's never going to talk me out of this horse. I've run my $2 to the betting window to put it all down on Celestial Splendor to win, because I want her to win, don't you see? Then I hurry back to watch my girl tear up the track. We're in this together. Now I'm invested in what happens out there. I look for Celestial Splendor, and there she is, dark auburn with black points in her mane, tail, ears. She starts strong, pulling to the front inside, but drops back a bit at the quarter, the half, lets 2 others get ahead of her like this is her resting pace. Then in the straight, she gathers her legs underneath her and starts pouring on rocket fuel. Her sinewy neck stretches into the open air. Her face is a fury. Celestial Splendor is every bit as pitiless and eternal and luminous as her name. She draws off and finishes first by a glorious 2.5 lengths. When my grandfather and I get back to the condo, we're so overexcited by our day that we have to lie down for a nap. The habits of octogenarians align perfectly with my metabolism, so I'm the perfect guest. My grandmother shuts the curtains against the blinding Florida sun. Afternoon hush settles over the carpeted rooms. A couple of hours later, I'm the first one up. I slide open the balcony door and step outside. A bracing shock to move from the canned, odorless air conditioning to real air, moist and salty. The tide is low, gentle waves roll onto the beach, making a soft landing. A foamy sigh, not a roar. The water pulls away from the sand and then does the same thing all over again. I could stand here forever, watching and listening. There is a rustling behind me, so I step back inside. My grandfather is awake, trying not to make too much noise because my grandmother is still napping. I whisper, let's go down to the beach. I drag a couple of canvas chairs onto the sand while he picks his way slowly over the shifty, loose ground. We stretch out side by side and face the ocean. The flat, white daytime sky has gained a purpled texture now. The depth of field above our heads telescopes into deep space as the sun gives us all a break by moving off center stage, drifting toward the buildings behind us, granting us an hour of blue light before dark. A certain brand of uncanny clarity. With no prompting, Grandpa begins telling me stories of the town where he was born, and how he came to America when he was 15 years old, traveling alone by steerage. He never saw his parents again after the day he left Italy. He would join his older brother who had made the crossing earlier and was setting up shop in Jersey City. There was no money to pay for his journey, so my grandfather had to earn his way by working in the ship's galley, washing dishes. He came up with a labor-saving technique, which was to load the dirty dishes into a large net, drop it over the side of the ship, and let the passing water clean the dishes. Work smart, not hard, right? That's how you get ahead. This young boy did not understand the power he was attempting to harness. The Atlantic Ocean tore the net from his hands, and the dishes disappeared into the churning depths. He is cracking himself up by the time he gets to the punchline. One of the things I like about Grandpa is that he makes himself the butt of his own funny stories. He is gracious that way. In his hometown of Acquaviva de Levanti, my grandfather tells me that inside the Cathedral of St. Eustachio, there's a special shrine dedicated to an unusual painting of the Blessed Mother and Child. He refers to her as Madonna di Costantinopoli. My grandfather has to say the name several times slowly before I understand, because he keeps pronouncing the word Costantinopoli with an Italian flourish, adding an extra vowel. So the word sounds like Constantinopoli. When the name clicks into place, I piece the scenario together gradually, and I have to wonder, what is an ancient Byzantine icon doing in this Roman Catholic church in southern Italy? Well, it turns out there's a story. Somewhere in the distant centuries ago, fishermen working their nets on the Adriatic coast near Acquaviva saw a small boat floating towards them. When they hauled the boat into shore, they found it did not contain human travelers, only a large painting on a cedar plank of a woman holding a child, clutching the gilded neck of his mother's dress. That she made such a perilous journey across the sea in such a fragile vessel and arrived unharmed to their hands could only be attributed to a divine source. That she obviously came from a lost world only made her more precious. The fishermen carried their miraculous catch into town and placed her on the altar where she belonged. Not for nothing, but she spared Acquaviva from plague in 1656. Ever since, my grandfather's hometown celebrates Madonna di Costantinopoli by carrying her through the streets each year on her feast day, and everyone abstains from eating meat or cheese. Also, there is money in this story. In thanks for turning away the plague, the town grants her an ex voto of 30 silver ducats to the church each year where her icon is housed. Again, I try unrolling her name from my tongue. Madonna di Costantinopoli. I get it wrong. My grandfather tries coaching me in the correct emphasis of the vowels. There's a rhythm to it that I don't grasp naturally. It's like stepping into a new dance. You have to plunge into the syllables without being too cautious and trust the music. We go back and forth. It's hopeless. Whenever I try to speak Italian, my mouth has two left feet. One last time. Constantinopoli? Pretty good, he says. It's not pretty good. He's being gracious. Again. In this blue light, my grandfather's face is peaceful. He has always had a gift for ease, no matter what. He finds something to savor in his own thoughts. Now burnished fragments of his childhood sparkle behind his eyes. I can see him turning over each piece, holding it to the light of awareness. A person could spend his whole life this way. The empty beach seems made for us. My grandfather is briefly talked out, so we sit in silence. I look out to the ocean and my thoughts drift over a bay filly from Kentucky and Our Lady of the Extra Vowel. How did I get so lucky? Cast into wonderment by a beautiful name twice in one day. It's not even dinner time yet. Across the water in front of us, the horizon is that line where the curve of the earth drops below my sight. I imagine how she ended up in a small boat bobbing across the Adriatic. Did she look up to the star-filled sky gliding over her uncertain passage? The person who put her there did so in a hurry, one step ahead of a hostile invasion. Just consider the desperation and the devotion in that gesture. Running from the church onto the beach and casting the Blessed Mother onto the waves. The rushed calculation. Whatever danger she faced out there, at least the water offered a slim chance at life compared to the certain death coming for her on land. This Madonna di Constantinople was likely a survivor of the iconoclasm. Whoever saved her regarded the painting as a live presence that could perish, and whose survival determined another form of continuity. The person who gave her to the sea also put a part of himself into the boat with her, the part that cannot be seen and does not die. These images sink below the horizon of my own thoughts, where they nest and curve around each other, getting comfortable for a long stay. The Bay Filly and Our Lady are unlikely bedmates, still they tuck into together. I take them with me when it's time to go home. After my grandfather and I walk back to the condo, after my grandmother has made us dinner, I'm guessing stuffed shells. After the night of soft Florida dreams, I'll go back to my brittle business in New York of getting and going. Yet in my ear will always echo these singing syllables that diminish or swell depending on my willingness to hear them. But when I do stop to listen, these lovely names lift me up into stars that point toward another destination. I can navigate anywhere with such words to guide me, any ocean, any century.
Woo! All right. Thank you for that, Constance. That was lovely. I now can tell C.T. Salazar that he was right. So spread the news far enough. So just for a little bit of run of show, we have open mic. We're going to do an intermission after Mona Lisa reads. Then we have open mic. We've got some signups left. You also have time to use the restroom, refill beverages, get something to eat if you haven't done that yet. So yeah, so that's what's happening in the near future. But next up is Mona Lisa. You ready? All right. I was going to say, you remember to sit back down. Your bio is so lengthy.
Oh my goodness, no, I need to pull up my.
Okay, we've got time. All right, Mona Lisa Saloy is an author and folklorist, educator, and scholar. An award-winning author of contemporary Creole culture and poems about Black New Orleans before and after Katrina. As a folklorist, Saloy documents sidewalk songs, jump rope rhymes, and clap hand games to discuss the importance of play. As a poet, her first book, Red Beans and Ricely Yours, won the T.S. Eliot Prize and the Penn Oakland Josephine Miles Award, and tied for a third award. She's written on the significance of the Black Beat poets, on the African American toasting tradition, on Black and Creole talk, on conditions and keeping Creole after the devastation of Hurricane Katrina, and her new book, Second Line Home, is a refreshing collection of poems that captures the day-to-day New Orleans speech, contemplates family dynamics, celebrates New Orleans, and all in a way everyday people can enjoy. Woo!
All of that.
All of that and more. No, this was the shortened version. The long version was a page. Let's give it up for Mona Lisa Saloy.
The smile on my face, that's you, Miss Annie. That was so delightful. Let's give her another hand. Okay, so I will read a mix of things, and I'll start with this one. This is from Second Line Home. New Orleans in January. White camellias stretch and flap like gardenias. Pink, red, yellow roses bloom flat with petals arched like open umbrellas. Trees and shrubs defy the control of brick, mortar, or iron bars, like the wild roses that trellis along wrought iron and wooden fences. King cakes compete for rare dollars. They're politically correct plastic babies, no longer just pink. Reed white now boast chocolate, gold, silver, even yellow. Green bodies inside, emblem of food, fortune for the year. Like the three kings seeking the baby Jesus. Once found, you're blessed for another year. Wild ducks and geese laugh and tease motorists along Bayou St. John, Moss Street, passing Esplanade Avenue. Not a care in the grasses, some more brown than green. Angel trumpets and night jasmine, fragrance dusk, when the moon rises in eastern skies, smiling. I read an old poem about my father, an older one, and then a newer one. My Creole Daddy one. This is my dad's blue easy chair, 4 years old and still too new. It blues his eyes when he sits sipping coffee and chickering, more like Mississippi River mud. This is my dad's green shirt that fades his eyes gray sometimes when he calls me by my sister's name now. But I remember that he wiped my behind and mopped the floors, with mother tired of walking all over New Orleans to Congress hats, with that special Applejack brim he needed to blend with this green shirt he could no longer button by himself. I fold family memories with this green seersucker shirt, thinning finally like Daddy's snow white 87-year-old hair. He walked the beaches of Marseille, flew over North Africa, whipped up Coubillon for GI buddies like Mr. Newstetter, Mr. Jackson whenever they landed. Newstetter called Daddy Nutshot, he said, since he was a short dude and would end fights quickly with a swift kick. You know where. It never failed. And what was my mother's name again? Mr. Jackson brings my daddy cigarettes on Fridays when he visits his brother Tommy, who sits near my daddy's good ear in the day room.
Jackson brings me menthols all the damn time. Must have saved his life or something, you get me? Ain't seen him in 50 years or more in my company. There's no place like New Orleans. Nowhere yet. Cowboys used to crawl out the swamp into my black iron pot.
His blue eyes fade under lids drunk with sleep. He draws a long swig of near beer.
Old tubes taste just like a bud.
Daddy affirms. It satisfies his need for a cold one now.
You look just like your mother, girl, but you're just too yellow. Any more bread pudding?
Yeah. Creole Daddy ways. My Creole Daddy's first wife was caramel cute, 5 feet petite, had wavy hair like white folks, a cradle Catholic, church going regularly like waking up to sunshine. She was his sweetheart, warming the home front when his long river road trips kept him away nights, delivering newly rolled tobacco packed like sardines in wooden boxes. Then something about one homecoming. She asleep in the sheets she pressed so perfectly. Daddy said she broke his heart in half, like a walnut split down the middle. My Creole Daddy's second wife was my mother. Deep chocolate, tall like me, 5'8", heavy bone, a black beauty, he often said. She a PK, a preacher's kid, the eldest, the rock of her family. Born and raised Baptist, Mount Zion style. Had no idea what my Creole Daddy saw on her face. She could sew, grow roses like her Chapatula's mom, heal most cuts and ailments with herbs from the yard. From Baptist, mother converted to Catholic to marry my Creole Daddy. That was the last time most saw him in church until his end. My chocolate Creole mother was more Catholic than my Creole Daddy, he said, and she prayed enough for him too. She prayed to the Blessed Mother and practiced healing when folks needed it. Few spells, only blessings. When she passed away, my world crushed like smashed pecans. Scattered hope here, broken dreams there. I see her nose daily in my mirror. I kiss with her lips, smile with her eyes. She taught me to crochet when it rains for days, to find the beauty in any space of a home. Though she feared water, I swam for her, brought home medals to assure her the kindness of water. That Negroes could swim, Mother. Okay, you swim for me, she said. My Creole daddy's last wife, Didi, was tall and milk chocolate, rockin' Baptist, and the rock of her family, raising 9 kids alone, caring for her ailing father, a good Christian woman. Like my mother, she sang any day. My mother sang Charles Brown's "Bells Will Be Ringing" any season, anytime she had a mind to belt it out like a sneeze. Didi, she sang "Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound," all hours of the day, staggering or sober. Now, Didi was common and had little common sense, stayed drunk daily. And that ain't no big Martine, no big lie. It told me I was smart because I earned my way. So I said my Creole daddy insisted that I stand up for myself and have to lay down for anything or anyone. Skills, he said. A woman have to have some skills her own. Just not too many, so she don't need a colored man. Didi's last daughter, about to graduate Joseph S. Clark High School like me, was killed going to the senior prom by a hit and run on the new Claiborne Avenue interstate. Like me, she wanted college, choices a woman can make for herself. Carol Ann died instantly, and that killed so much in Didi, my Creole daddy's 3rd wife. Some say she drank herself to death. Yes, Didi had bourbon with Coke back for breakfast most days. Still, I know better. Grief got hold of her like the left side of bad luck and never let go. Finally, she has peace. Beautiful. And I'm going to read 2 poems from my sister. This poem is for you, my sister, from Barbara Ann. The first one is from my first book, and the second one will be in my new book coming out spring. This poem is for you, my sister, from Barbara Ann. Still 8 years my elder, I remember clutching your circular felt skirt, me all snotty-nosed and wanting your rhinestone sweater. I remember wishing to follow you to the zoo or the record shop, and being told to skip rope and dream little black girl dreams of saints, voodoo queens, or guardian angels. But you fed me Brooke Benton, Dinah Washington, and Ella Fitzgerald as appetizers. At 10, I was drunk on Nat King Cole, Coltrane, and Miles Davis, and my spirit would never be measured in years again. One fall, you ran from Jim Crow, left for Seattle, our room full of your rose hip sachets, your old green leather jacket, and the straight skirts I had no hips to fill. My life shaken without you was empty like a finished Barks root beer. I wore loneliness like your hand-me-down skirts. When the record player screeched, I heard your voice, "Hey girl," between Johnny Mathis melodies. When Sunny gets blue, she breathes a sigh of sadness, like the wind that stirs the trees. Your face, faint, floods me with your Chapatula smile, thick black braids never aging in your high school photo. After mother passed and brother joined the Marines, and daddy drank his memories sour and stale as day-old beer breath, I wanted you to answer my anger, to wipe my tears dry with a sock hop or a backyard barbecue. So I followed your memory northwest over Cascade Mountains and Suquamish tribes. I heard mother's voice. "You're mine good now, you hear? You're mine, your sister good now." You, mother of a son, wife to a man who believes love in unidentified emotion, tenderness a foreign conspiracy. Each season of male a burden like horror, the hell on his shoulders leaning on you like a sawhorse. Your hands are the color of gentleness and Pacific sand. Your breasts broken with years of curses cold as frostbite, and our prayers melting each scream like fudge. So sister love dipped in golden seal, mouthfuls of carrot juice and holy water, broke the pain of those years like a finger snap or a juke. This poem is for you, my sister, with your Chapatula smile, jet black braids, that round bottom like mother's, and your ankles that swell with the rain. Still 8 years my senior, time peels away kiwi fruit memories that stay with alfalfa seeds sprouting friendship and globetrotting. And as we skip across Caribbean beaches or Pacific shores, we swim among warm crowds. Your eyes soothe me like the guardian angel of my childhood dreams. We are masked in love and mother's smile. So this poem is for you, my sister, with your Chapatula smile, jet black braids, that round bottom like mother's, and your ankles that swell with the rain. This is a recent one. I had the honor, it was on Poem Day, Poetry Foundation. God was willing, sis, I'm home. And I have to say, she's the reason I have an education. She made me go to college. I didn't want to go. God was willing, sis, I'm home. Rebuilt our little shotgun house Daddy bought for $2,000 on the GI Bill post-World War II in the 7th Ward. It was wide enough to love 2 families at a time, double long and wide like a bulldog, stocky with a sturdy gate, seemingly indestructible with its turn-of-the-century plastering lap between walls held by red brick fireplaces, anchors for kin to hold on to, steady, outlasting many storms from Betsy to Camille, hurricanes that came and went like occasional visitors who overstayed welcome. Here we saved every book we ever had, from old Bibles listing births, marriages, deaths, to Sherlock Holmes and the Harvard classics, 2 dictionaries, American Heritage and Webster's, plus the American People's Encyclopedia, that answered questions Daddy or Mother couldn't from newspapers, such as the State's Item, but especially the Louisiana Weekly, where Negroes had starring roles as newly married, or debuted swimmers medaled in photos with their part-time coaches, who were full-time teachers like Vic Vavasor, who with their own kids too, spent their summers, Saturdays, and after school time, teaching us regulation sports, from baseball, football, swimming, to supervised play. Oh my goodness, I'll hit the wrong thing. Teaching us regulation sports, from baseball, football, swimming, to supervised play where we were all a team and neighbors. And grudges never lasted more than an hour, or no longer than a busted lip that's gone when the swelling fades. And heals like our sunburns in summers between thunder showers we see coming blocks away. Our shotgun castle, our guardian of refuge from those Jim Crow days in our 7th Ward neighborhood, when we had all we needed for comfort and summer fun, of shaved ice or hucklebucks, and winters without cold, and no gunshots. And this is also, I've been home 4 years in my family home, and like a lot of people, I lost everything. So this recalls, it took a long time to write this poem, but this recalls that moment right before the storm. It speaks for itself. 2 years ago, 2 weeks before Katrina. It was hotter and more humid than now, 1 week before Katrina hit. The ink was not dry yet on my PhD. My cousins, Big D and Con, plus more family, gave me a knockdown, dance-up backyard party. Cousins, neighbors, colleagues came from far. Elder neighbors who loved me through the hardest days of research and elder care of my daddy. Through the crack epidemic that left Daddy drooling from the putrid red beans, a layer of moldy slime swimming across the top of the big black iron pot I found in the filthy mice and rat-infested kitchen with only a piece of roof dangling, roaches flying from nest to nest like birds. My family remembered that crackhead stole everything not nailed down, didn't leave Daddy a pair of shoes. I had to draw around his feet on cardboard for sizing. The shoe store clerk wanted security to remove me until I stood my ground and left with a tan pair of huaraches and slippers for Daddy. Doctors thought Daddy deaf and deteriorating from dementia, but he had just closed his ears and leaking eyes to the disappointment he saw in his stepkids and transient men who took over his home, his life with no hot running water, a broken toilet, the weeds growing through the bathroom floor from the dirt ground, 4 feet below the clawfoot iron tub leaning through the broken floorboards rotten from neglect. Took me 2 years in and out of court to get rid of those niggas. It was the filth and poor nutrition on top of it that diminished this World War II Army sergeant, master carpenter, into a man who babbled, slobbered, who forgot who he knew. My daddy, who used to dance with my mother and shuck oysters at our backyard parties growing up, had no idea what I walked into. Just rolled his 300-pound body in sheets to clean him and change bed linens until the shower was installed. His first shower since his Army days, he sang. Daddy was happy again and came back to himself fully for years, returning to stand guard on the front porch and greet family and neighbors, or what we call dope hopping, talk stuff about passers-by. Even his doctors were shocked. We all knew it was only God and a lot of prayers. My new college colleagues, friends, and professors, now friends, came and ate Buster's Plotterines and Chef Drew's Bananas Foster bread pudding with us, and danced a second line with us onto Dual Street and A.B. Turo Avenue, laughing faces in tune to Levert's I'm a Joan Casanova. Me and Romeo ain't never been friends. Can't you see how much I really love you? Gonna say it to you time and time again. Oh, Casanova. They thought my family was celebrating my degree. My cousin Larry said this backyard bash took him to our old parties, that everybody came for me, not for a wedding or a funeral. Baby, nobody got married and nobody died, he shouted. They came for me, for watching me love Daddy back to health, back to himself, back to our family, and yes, the PhD of Family First, bringing us all together the way we were all raised. Only God, we said, only God. Cicadas sang through the evening, serenading the nights until stopped only days later by Hurricane Katrina, fanned across the Gulf. That was our family's last time all together, with longtime elders Mush, our jazz crooner, the fishnet-making Leons and great gumbo Cerise no longer here. I told my family maybe I'll write a novel about those hard days of waking up to a strawberry crackhead whore, peering over the African beads on my dresser, and Daddy with no shoes. I'll change the names to protect the guilty. It was hotter and more humid years ago, the last time our family was all together, when nobody died and no one got married. I'm a Joan Casanova. Me and Romeo ain't never been friends. Can't you see how much I really love you? Gonna say it to you time and time again. Oh, Casanova, thank you so much.
Give it up one more time for
Yeah.